Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs as we chat with the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting. Well, our topic today is the 45 Colt. Is it a has-been antique anachronism, or is it something that really still matters to handgun shooters today? I'm calling up Roy Huntington, and I bet you can guess what our position is on it, since we've got a closet full of them apiece. But there's a lot of good things about the 45 Colt, and we're going to talk about them in just a second. Of course, make sure you like and subscribe, and then I'm going to talk to Roy about that right after this great word from our sponsor, Armscor and Rock Island Armory.
The STK series blends the advantages of a striker-fired pistol with everything you love about your 1911. The STK100 Ultra has an updated frame with more aggressive side grip panels and checkered front and back straps. But we didn't stop there. You'll see that the optic footprint is now larger, which means even more options for your favorite red dot. The new STK from Rock Island Armory. Experience the power and precision of the Rock today. For more info, visit armscor.com.
Hi there, welcome today to this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. We're going to talk about the 45 Clot.
What? Wait. What? Wait, I signed up to talk about the 45 Colt.
That's it.
So,
the what?
the Clot. You know, that reminds me, one of the previous editors of Guns Magazine used to call it Clot. He'd say, like, yeah, I got a new gun in from Clot today, you know.
What? Okay.
I know. And he used to call Winchester Winky Cheeser.
Okay.
Which is a little bit funny, actually.
It is funny. It is funny. Well, we're going to talk about the 45 Clot, the 45 Colt, whatever you want to call it today. But we did a show 2 weeks ago. It was called Archaic Cartridges. And we missed an important one, but we only mentioned briefly the 45 Colt. And it really surprised me. Sometimes these topics really take off, and that was one that did. So the cartridge we missed, by the way, the 22 long rifle.
Duh.
But yeah. You know, I will say, and this is kind of a sidebar, doing these podcasts, I'm looking into the camera, we're talking, trying to make it entertaining and all that. I've done, in another world, in another life, I've been a musician, I performed different places, and it's like being on stage, even though it's just me and Roy talking. I know there's a camera there and you're trying to make things go and flow and all that stuff. And it's hard to think 2 or 3 questions ahead. And that's how you miss things like the 22 long rifle. So, yeah.
2 or 3 questions ahead. I'm just happy to know what I'm talking about at the moment.
I know. So, well, I'll tell you, it's exactly like being an interrogator in law enforcement. You know, you want to ask questions you already know the answer to, and you want to lead things a certain way. So you always kind of want to have a little roadmap, and that's what I try to do here. And we've been moderately successful at it. So anyway, sidebar aside, we're going to talk about the 45 Colt. It's truly one of those archaic cartridges, and I just realized I didn't look up the exact date that it was first issued, but it was the Colt single action. Was that the first? Yeah, was that the first gun chambered for it?
It was after that, because they first chambered it in 4440.
44, yeah.
But I think it was very soon afterwards, and I can't recall the time off the top of my head. Well, the reason why I thought it would be a good idea to talk about it is that in the comments from our archaic cartridges, I mean, almost everyone who said, "Oh, I love and they would list cartridges. Yeah. I mean, the 45 Colt was almost always first or second.
Yep.
Yep. And I mean, I don't know. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but it's funny if you look on the interwebs and the forums, because I recently did some looking around for bear guns for a little adventure I've just concluded, because I was going to be in big bear country, Gridleys, and I've not got a lot of experience with Gridleys, so I was kind of looking at what I want to take and carry and all that stuff. And it's funny, just like everything, I was looking at the 45 Colt, worst cartridge ever, Roy, it'll get you killed, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny, the haters out there on the 45 Colt, which first of all, it's an inanimate object. I don't know why you'd hate it. And it's got a great history, but for some reason, it's one of those cartridges that people just like to poo-poo the whole thing and tell you why it's such a stupid, dumb, idiotic cartridge. And I just don't get it, because I like it. I like it a lot. I shoot it. I think it's very versatile. I mean, I know you like it too, Roy.
People who say it's stupid are people who are ignorant. I almost said stupid, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Because if you say you like a 44 Magnum, then you should also say you like a 45 Colt, because they basically can mirror one another in performance, you know? And actually thinking about it, because the 44 Magnum was from around 1955, give or take a little bit. So that's, 75 years old. So maybe it's archaic too.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thought crossed my mind is that, like, this is a nickel-plated Colt single-action Army with ivory grips. So call it a 1873 design, you know, and then here is a Freedom Arms Model 97, also in 45 Colt, which I would call cutting-edge modern technology, you know, because it takes advantage of every bit of modern manufacturing expertise, metallurgy, you know, computer, CAD/CAM, CNC, all that kind of stuff. And so there we are, 150 years apart, two different guns, shooting the same cartridge. That's pretty good legs, if you ask me, you know, and I think there's a reason for it. For me, it's historical, which to me is fun. And so I recently got this Colt. It's a 1909 new service, and actually I built this gun with Bill Lockridge. Bill Lockridge actually did all the building. I stood around and supervised and poked him and, you know, and stuff. I'm glad he did. But I just shot that gun, and I can't tell you how it feels, because, you know, this gun was made in 1944, and it was a Lend-Lease gun, so it went to Britain, chambered in 455 for the war. Then it was imported back after the war, and whoever imported it ran a chamber reamer in it and made it 45 Colt. And so when I shot it with Black Hills Cowboy ammo just a couple of days ago, and it was just, the gun was talking to me, you know, where it's been and what it's seen and the changes that it's had. And you shoot it, and it always gives you that really nice authoritative thump, you know, in your hand. And if the sun's right, you can see that big bullet go down toward the target. It was just fun. And I don't know why anyone would poo-poo that, you know. It's
people that haven't used it or carried it. I think that's, and that goes back to that ignorance thing.
Yeah, I think in today's world, people are so, I don't know why this is too. They want to see the negative, you know. And gosh, with the 45 Colt, just like a lot of other cartridges, 44 Magnum and, you know, 4440, not so much, just because there are some limitations, but, you know, 357s and there's some other cartridges like that because of their versatility, they actually are very useful. So you think, we'll start at the lower end. You can actually make a 45 shot capsule cartridge for 45 Colt. Mike Venturino used to love to do that because he hated snakes, and he would always he had a 3-inch sheriff's model Colt that he used to keep in his back pocket. He used to shoot snakes with it. So okay, we have that at the low end of it, and then the next step up might be a cowboy load. So you're looking at a 250 round nose flat point at maybe 700 feet per second. You know, then maybe you get to an original style black powder load, which we're pushing them at close to 900 feet per second. So those guns that the 7.5-inch artillery model Colt single actions that were used by the Custer guys and stuff like that, they were throwing 250 grain bullets at like 950 feet per second. Well, I'm sorry, that's as modern as you would ever need to be.
Yeah. That'll put a whammy cack on you, as we used to say.
Yeah, and that was 150 years ago. So then now you can do lightweight bullets. You can do 125 grain bullets, 180, 200 grain bullets. You could do heavy bullets. You want to shoot a 300 grain hard cast semi-wad cutter at 1,400 feet per second and shoot an elephant? You can do that.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's been done.
It's been done. You know, you want to use a modern bullet like some of the Hornady ammunition that are, you know, more almost like rifle loads, you know, so more pointed with a synthetic hollow point fill in the inside. You know, there are defensive loads. CCI's made some defensive loads for the 45 Colt that are legendary. And so for someone to say that, oh no, it's stupid, it's old fashioned, you can't do anything with it. I mean, all you have to do is open your eyes, pick up any reloading manual, go to any manufacturer's ammunition manufacturer's website. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I always think if somebody says, and I see this among shooters sometimes, somebody will say, well, the 45 Colt's stupid. And I always see somebody over here smiling.
Yeah.
As he unzips his case, he's got a Freedom Arms Model 83 and 45 Colt. It's like, he knows better.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
I mean, one more thing. This little short-barreled, 3.5-inch barrel, right? 45 Colt, Freedom Arms. Black Hills, cowboy ammunition, it'll shoot 1.5 to 2 inches at 50 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Period. You know?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I was going to kind of embellish on or take further your talk about I call it the romance of the cartridge. I've talked about before, we did the horseback lion hunt in Arizona back in end of November. And especially from a guy from the East, who the only time I rode horses was around the pasture, next to the red barn. There wasn't a lot of horses going on. So to be out in the desert on a horse, carrying my Colt 45, wearing my cowboy hat. I was posing, but you know what? It felt really, really good. So
it was real fun.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but
I don't think there's anything wrong with it either. You know, I mean, I have it was a turnbull gun here, turnbull finishes, got my name on the backstrap. 4 3/4-inch gun, USFA. It's not a Colt, but I think it's maybe a better gun. And sometimes I keep that gun on my desk just because it's fun to look at. And whenever I look at it, you can like smell the cattle and hear the creak of the leather and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I think, like I said, I think anyone who seems to think that it's inadequate or ineffective or not modern, just really needs to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, when I went down this rabbit hole of, I was basically researching guns that I had that I wanted to take with me into grizzly country. And of course I didn't end up seeing one. Saw a moose. That was kind of cool. And caught some cutthroat and all that good Western stuff among the lodge poles and all that. But anyway, it was disheartening to me that no matter what gun we're talking about, somebody, well, that's not enough, or some of them are even, that's too much, which I don't know if with a grizzly there could ever be too much. But I think the consensus was the 45 Colt is just old school and you're endangering yourself and everybody else. But yet folks that would say things like, well, I've lived in the backcountry of Alaska for the last 20 years, or I was a surveyor and, I've had 12 grizzly encounters. Those guys all said, the hard cast, 250, 300, 45 Colt in a say one of the Ruger guns or Freedom Arms solved all their problems. So and like you said, elephants have been taken with them. So open your mind.
If I have been on a bison hunt, American bison hunt, where someone shot a bison with a Freedom Arms Model 83 single action revolver in 45 Colt, and he had a hand load, and it was like a 340 hard cast semi-wad cutter.
Yeah,
and I think he was probably pushing 1350, 1400 feet per second, right?
That'll thump.
Well, it went. He fired 2 shots, went completely through the bison.
Wow.
Left 45 caliber holes completely through the bison. We saw, blood and everything fly out the other side where the bullets exited. the bison took about 2 steps and then decided that he was dead. Boom. And so,
and if you've ever been near a bison, they're the size of a minivan.
Yeah.
You're ginormous.
And yet, people say, well, the 44 Magnum is, it's like, well, I'm sorry, but the 44 Magnum isn't going to do any better than that, and maybe not that good. In the really late 90s, I want to say maybe really early 2000s, I can't remember for sure, Clint Smith put on what he called the pre-1900 class at Thunder Ranch when it was in Texas. And so it was how to fight with cowboy guns. And so it wasn't SAS. It wasn't cowboy shooting, right?
Yeah.
With low power loads and ping, 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 and that kind of stuff. And so we dressed the parts in like kind of cowboy gear, and we went there, and I had a pair of Ruger single action Vaqueros because they had just come out then, and I had a Rossi 92 lever gun in 45 Colt. So they were all 3 in 45 Colt. And, a lot of people had real Colt single actions, and there was a good cross section of guns there. A lot of 92s, 73s. Clint had a Henry that was chambered in 45 Colt. And so what he did, though, was he taught us how to fight with the guns.
Mm-hmm.
And so we duplicated famous Old West shootouts, for instance. And then he made up some things like, hey, you got to empty your gun at this bad guy and empty your other revolver at that bad guy, then go to your rifle and shoot the 100-yard bad guy. And, well, what I came away with is that I was just shooting Black Hills 45 Colt ammunition, so call it a 250 at 750 feet per second. It's not a real heavy load. But you know what? When I shot a steel silhouette with that, it clanged. Somebody was shooting a 38 single action. It was like, tink, 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 tink. You shoot it with a 45 Colt and you go clang. And I thought, well, that works. We were able to hit 100-yard steel silhouettes with the guns, once you dialed in the elevation stuff. But a 100-yard silhouette with that Model 92 is a piece of cake.
Yeah.
And you're still shooting a 45 Colt. And so there's a reason why it's still used. It's because it's still as effective or more effective now. I think, we have modern technology, modern brass design, modern firearms for modern bullet design, modern powders, the ability to put optics on a revolver that shoots 45 Colt.
Yeah.
I think it's every bit as important as it was when it was first introduced. A lot of people may not know this too, is that 45 Colt wasn't chambered in the first lever action rifles because the original 45 Colt rims were too small. Mm-hmm. And so the lever action guns were chambered in 4440 generally because it had an actual rim. So it wasn't until later that they broadened the rim, and that's why we have 45 Colt lever guns now.
Well, there's 2 technical topics I want to talk about for folks that aren't super versed in the 45 Colt, and we'll start with the round itself. It's commonly called, incorrectly, the 45 long Colt, and it's actually the 45 Colt. But you will see that I've even seen gun manufacturers say 45 long Colt. So there was well, I'll let you explain the difference, Roy.
Well, initially it was the 45 Colt, and it was chambered. And remember, we said earlier, it was a pretty stout load. Mm-hmm. And when Smith & Wesson introduced the top break early American and Russian revolvers, that load was pretty stout, and troopers and Army people were complaining. And so they made a 45 short Colt, which was a lighter load, basically, 700 feet per second or so, give or take a little bit. And so you had 2 different cartridges, a shorter case and the standard 45 Colt case. But after a little while, the Army said, look, this is a logistics nightmare. We're just going to go back to the 45 Colt. But for a while, people were saying, well, do you mean the long Colt or the short Colt?
Yep.
Right? So that's how that happened. But they do have a 45 short Colt now. You can get that. It's cowboy ammunition. But the actual real name is what the original name was, which is 45 Colt. So It was the daddy of the cartridges.
Yep.
So,
yep.
And the short Colt is so, I'll use that archaic word, I mean, you almost never will see it or find it anywhere.
Yeah.
I know their diehard cowboy action shooters will insist that that's, and they load it and shoot it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the real world, if you say 45 Colt, people go, oh, okay. I'm always amused, though, when people say, you mean long Colt, right? It's like, yeah, okay.
Not so much. Not so much.
We don't need to go there.
Yeah. So the other thing is this difference in guns. Occasionally, especially if you're a hand loader, but sometimes there's some factory loads that will say only for, say, Ruger 45 Colt single actions. And the reason being is the Colt 1873 single action Army, the Ruger Vaquero, new Vaquero, versus there was an original older model that was stronger, but the new Vaquero, which is the vast majority of Ruger Vaquero models, are basically built for the 45 Colt that was the original cartridge, which was black powder. So the pressures were lower, so they can handle modern smokeless powder, but folks have found that they can upload that to some really high velocities and some higher pressure, but you need a gun that can handle that. So if you see things like use only in Ruger single action or certain models of Rugers, you need to pay heed, because if you shoot it in your single action Army, you shoot it in your Ruger Vaquero, you might have a problem. You don't hear about it very often, but the potential is there. So I kind of boogered that explanation up, Roy, but you can kind of clean it up there.
Well, you're exactly right. People being people that want to push things as far as they can. And so if you have one of those loads we're talking about, a 300 grain bullet, 350 grain bullet, 1400 feet per second, you actually can blow your Colt single action Peacemaker up with that kind of ammunition. So that's why Freedom Arms are interesting, because you basically can shoot anything you have the guts to load in it. Any of the full size frame Ruger single actions are safe. Thompson Center Contenders. There are a few other guns like that. But the older guns, like that old Colt that I just showed you, we're talking. And standard Colt single actions, we're talking, I don't know, at 18,000 PSI to 21,000 PSI. So relatively low pressure. Some of these other ones will spike at 40,000, 45,000 PSI. So I don't tempt fate, And I will say this, people are really funny. When I do videos in shooting big guns, I did one on shooting a 460 the other day, and they were saying, and I've done some on 29s and 44 Magnums and stuff, and they say, oh gosh, that kick, that really scares me, and aren't you afraid of that, And I always say, well, it's why I don't shoot guns that kick real hard regularly. So you don't have to. And I mean, unless I'm hunting an elephant or something, the last thing I would do is go on my back porch and shoot a 300 grain 45 Colt bullet at 1,350 feet per second for fun.
Yeah.
I would not do that,
Well, unfortunately, sometimes the callowness of youth has to impress you with the amount of punishment they can absorb, because I've been there, done that. And, I always think of John Taffin, rest in peace, John. But in the last few years, he's had terrible arthritis, and he attributes it to many, many years of shooting really, really hot handguns. So there is a price you can pay, and by the time you get to be of the experience level of Roy and I, things start really hurting. So
well, and I think another good thing about the 45 Colt and the 44 Magnum, 44 Special, 357, a lot of other cartridges, almost any revolver cartridge, is you can load them down or load them up. And so if you buy a Freedom Arms, if you buy a Colt single action or whatever, a Ruger adjustable sighted gun, and get it in 45 Colt, for instance, well, you have just bought a half a dozen different guns in one gun. And so buy a simple Lee single stage loading press, and now you have everything from 135 grain plinking load that a 12-year-old little girl can shoot with you in the backyard or wherever, up to a fire breathing, 250 at 1100 feet per second, if you depending on the gun. You can go more than that if you want to. So it's really, really versatile. I like a 45 Colt wad cutter load. Like when you load that at, say, 800 feet per second, there's a little thump to it, but there's nothing that's going to hurt you. But boy, I'll tell you, it'll sure solve any problem you'll ever bump into.
Exactly. Well, in closing, I want to mention what we have to mention a lot anymore, and that is, this is not the ultimate cartridge that every single person needs to own, or the flip side of that is, this is the dumbest cartridge ever, you're stupid. No, we're not going to be YouTube influencers. Hey, if you want, we think you should try it out. You may find you'll like it. You may find you like it a lot, or you may go, it's okay. But at least you've tried it. You've expanded your experience. So that's kind of when we start talking about some of these quote unquote archaic cartridges, try them out. They're out there, but as Roy said, there's a reason they're still here, because they still perform pretty well in. If you do your job, the bullet will pretty much do its job. So, any closing thoughts there, Roy?
When I see 45 Colt, I think accuracy, because it's sublimely accurate, depending on the gun and the load. I see versatility. I see a cross-section of usefulness, from shot cartridges to target wad cutters to high-performance ammunition. And I see history. And I don't know what's wrong with any of that.
Exactly. Exactly. So try it out. Try the 45 Colt, buy a single action, and go out and you may find that you've opened a whole new world that you didn't even know existed. So, Roy, appreciate it. And it's been a great talking to you about this archaic, only the old fudge use it cartridge. But try it. You may like it. And we'll talk about it some more. But again, thanks for joining us for this one. It's always a hoot talking to Roy Huntington, and I hope if the 45 Colt is new to you, we've inspired you to maybe pick one up and take it for a spin out on the range. I think you'll find why we like it too, even in 2025. Before we go, a couple things. Of course, please like and subscribe to the podcast. That's really important, and how we keep coming to you free week after week. Also, if you're looking to buy a subscription to either Guns Magazine or our sister publication, American Handgunner Magazine, you can do that at fmgpubs.com. There's lots of great deals, and you can pick up our special interest publications such as Roy's Insider or John Connor's Odd Angry Shot, along with a lot of other great things. And as I said, our subscriptions to our magazines, that's fmgpubs.com. And of course, don't forget our great sponsor, Armscor and Rock Island Armory.
The new STK from Rock Island Armory. Experience the power and precision of the Rock today. For more info, visit armscor.com.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. On behalf of everybody who's working so hard here at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.